Hi everybody. As you've just been told, if you've got any issues, put them into the Q&A. The group chat we tend to save for exciting stuff, interesting stuff. I hope you're all okay. It's lovely to see you all here again. I can see we've got like 90 odd people now, which is absolutely fantastic. So if you haven't been with us before, welcome. And if you have, welcome back. A slight departure from the usual today in that I'm going to focus on just one discrete area, which is the big area really, which is reading. So this is just a little starter activity for you here. This is what you get in a GCSE exam. It's an extract from The Secret Teacher, Dispatches from the Classroom by Anonymous, which covers a year in the life of a teacher. In this extract, the narrator, an NQT, in an English department at a tough inner city academy, is attending his first departmental meeting to which a visitor from the exam board has been invited. Now, if you've seen me live, so to speak, you might have seen this before. But it's just a bit of a giggle for you. You can have a go now, actually, if you can think of during the meeting, the second paragraph, it says, we began standardisation, which involved eating, blank, drinking. So what would they have been eating and drinking in the meeting is the interesting one. So if anybody's got any ideas on that. This is just a technique that I'm going to show you later on, actually, for making reading easier. But if anybody's got any ideas, I love it. Paulette thinks pizza and wine. Lovely idea, but you're not right. Biscuits, you're close, but it's a specific kind of biscuit. It's biscuits and tea, I think. Or biscuits and coffee. We'll see in a minute. No, it's not Maltesers, no. Any ideas on the type of biscuits? They're quite luxurious, actually. Not hobnobs, no. No, although it should be. Let's move on and have a look. It is actually Jaffa cakes and coffee, okay? So that's just, we're going to go back to that technique in a little while. That was just a little bit of a giggle, and you'll laugh at that when you read that. It's actually a very entertaining read. It won't take you very long, but it's an entertaining read, actually. So I can recommend it. Okay, let's look at what we're doing today then. Webinar number 9. The weeks have just flown by, haven't they? Language focus today. Agenda, the usual. We're going to check in a minute, get some feedback, get some ideas from you. Then I'm going to do some feedback, online resources, language resources and ideas. As I've said, focus on reading today. Then tea break, the usual time to discuss, share, energize. And then some shared resources, which we've had quite a few in, okay. Somebody's put controversial Jaffa cakes. Yeah, I know. Are they biscuits? I think they're biscuits because you eat them in a biscuit way rather than a cake way. Cake's more on a plate. You don't have biscuits on a plate, but there you go. That's my contribution to the great Jaffa cake debate anyway. But if it doesn't have a plate, it's not a cake. Let's look at feedback then. These are things people put on your feedback at the end. I read everything. I read it all. Evaluation questions, in particular, getting students to make their opinion clear and not just basic P. Now, I'm going to cover that a little bit today, but I think I covered that quite a bit last week. Enabling students to identify points within a text. Now, the reading techniques I'm going to give you today will enable them to do that. Cake on a plate, somebody's put. No, I definitely feel common. Sorry. I just like to make an occasion of it. Somebody wanted how to create really meaningful, effective multiple choice quizzes. Now, I do have an idea about that. Whether they're effective or not depends on how well my class gets on with them this week. So I'll let you know on that. More guest speakers, I'll tell you in a minute. We have got another guest speaker lined up, hopefully. And ideas for creatively approaching text without obviously looking at exam skills. Now, that is something that I think a lot of the resources I've given you could be adapted for, particularly the ones I did in previous lessons, sorry, got my teacher hat on, in previous sessions where I used the art idea. But I will have a think about that. Okay, so they were just some of the ideas that cropped up and when I'm going to cover them. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a check-in. And I just want to say actually a hello to Amy, who is my head of department from the school I've been working at this year. So hello, Amy, thanks for joining us. And these are the questions I want you to answer. What is the biggest challenge, biggest barrier you face when approaching challenging text in the classroom? How do you approach challenging text? And a controversial one, more controversial perhaps than the Jaffa cakes. Do you think some of the GCSE texts are too challenging for any of your students? So I'm really talking about language here, not necessarily the literature text. Okay, so have a go at that and let's see what we come up with. Straight away, student interest in barrier, yeah. Comprehension, getting the students to read it. Vocabulary. Perception of it being boring, yes, absolutely, I totally agree with that. Vocabulary, yeah, students understanding them. People do small extracts at a time, yeah. Encouraging them to engage in the length of time of the reading, yeah, and the vocabulary. Students reading in detail, understanding of context. Immediate disinterest, yes. 19th century is tricky. Jekyll and Hyde is impenetrable for a lot of students. Yes, I don't disagree with that. They struggle with the 19th century. Gosh, this really did. I'm so glad I've done this because this has actually got the biggest stream coming up here. Having an opinion rather than this is boring, yes. You could come up with the old only boring people find things boring. Length of the text is a problem, large text. Okay, I'm just going to leave that running for another 30 seconds because it's the same thing that's coming through really. By contextualizing, my kids love part of our lessons, even the ones who have English. Making it relevant, yeah. They tell me they can't read. I think we're coming up with the same things here. Excellent. So let's take that away then. I think again, it's absolutely, we're all coming up with the same things. And I think you do get a copy of these chats that are made available afterwards. Okay, so if we could move on. Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you. So let's look at today then, online resources. So before I get on to tackling the big reading debate, I'm going to show a couple of resources that I think will help. Now, I've shown this before, but the British Library, I'm going mad for the British Library at the moment. They've got this lovely teaching pack, which is great for 19th century non-fiction. So you AQA people, it's ideal for you. But it's also good for Edexcel, just anyway, for reading skills. And they've got them on the theme of education, this one, but I found them on another theme as well. And what they've got is the original text, a facsimile of the original text, and then they've actually printed it out in a Word document so you can use it in the classroom. So they're brilliant. Jenny says, I love BL resources. They're excellent. Yeah, I do. And they're great for A-level as well. Absolutely. So that's one worth looking at. And I'm going to use a couple of those later on in this session. The great Kat Howard, who was with us last week, has written one of her blogs there. Now, this is going back to last week. If you were with us last week, Kat talked at length about introducing topics at both Key Stage 3 and 4 and 5 with big lectures. And if you go onto her blog page, you can find the blog there. If you just search a thought on creating a learning culture, this is where she writes about the big lectures that they've done and shows the lecture program that they've done at her school. Okay. Kelly said, where can we access the British Library resources? If you go on the British Library website, they're very easy to find, but I've put the link at the top of the page on that previous slide, so you can go through there. So yeah, back to Kat Howard. If you want to research her big lectures, which if you weren't with us last week, is her idea of making a new topic sort of important and creating interest by having just a big lecture that the students take notes at, which I thought was a fantastic idea. Kate McCabe is another person that I follow on Twitter, and she wrote, going back to reading now, she wrote a fantastic blog post about context for the unseen. And she's used as an example an AQA exam paper text, where what the students had done was to do the zoom in, and they zoomed in on the words small and hungry, and understandably come up with vulnerable and desperate, poor, etc., etc., all the connotations you could possibly find for small and hungry. But in fact, because they hadn't done the big picture, they hadn't read the whole text, what it was about was a head teacher actually who was small, but small in stature. And in fact, the hungry was hungry for success, and the small was meant to be juxtaposed to how powerful she was within the school. Okay, so what they'd done was to misread completely. So her blog post here is about reading for the bigger picture, so it's a very useful one to read. Oh, just gone too far. There we go. CPD of the week here. If you go on the English and Media Centre's website and you sign up for the online CPD about just writing, you'll get the free resource there. And I think their sessions are only about £10. And I did one recently, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and it was absolutely fantastic. Another one for reading skills and for writing is the charity First Story, who have a very good Twitter feed, and they also have a website. And they're a charitable foundation set up to support creative writing. And I talked over the last couple of weeks of these blackout poetries, because I showed you the one that my students had done where they found the only rude words in the whole book, typically. Here, I was going to do some more on it, but there's so much on the internet that you don't really need my contribution. And this was fabulous. It was done last week using an article from The Guardian, I think, about Black Lives Matter. And what they've done is get the students to, if you like, summarize the meaning of the article by using some words from it in a blackout way, which I thought was a really good idea, actually. So rather than taking the words out and making something else with them, what blackout can be used for is actually getting down, crystallizing down to the actual bigger picture, the essence of the article. So that was my idea there. Okay. So language, ideas and resources. As I've said, if you've been before and you've gone away with 3 or 4 resources that I've made, this week's going to be just ever so slightly different because it's more ideas than specific resources. So I hope you'll find it interesting nevertheless. Now it's about reading, and I'm really passionate about reading in the classroom. It was ultimately, I suppose, what we all went into English teaching for. But then I got into the classroom, and I often come across this because most of my classes tend to be on the old-fashioned CD borderline, and they often have quite troublesome boys in. So I get this: the weak reader, the reluctant reader, the lazy reader, the inexperienced reader. And what I found actually is an awful lot, particularly the boys, tended to fall into the lazy reader or the reluctant reader category because they were so used to the teacher eventually reading it to them and telling them what something meant that actually they didn't have to read at all. They knew if they gave long enough, I would give in and read it to them. But all those readers are in some way fazed by being given an A4 sheet of something at the beginning of a lesson. And I wanted to find a technique to get beyond this. And also I was inspired recently by Barbara, whose book, if I haven't already tried to flog it to you on her behalf, is What Matters in English Teaching. I found it absolutely amazing. I just keep going back to it. And here's a couple of texts here, which I thought really struck a chord with me. Challenging texts can have the reverse effect of the one we fear. They can give confidence rather than taking it away. It is important to establish for students that the problems of reading a challenging text lie in the text itself, not the reader. They need to know they're about to meet a challenge. And that should be, I've typed it wrong there, it should be about to meet a challenge. Somebody said they watched her CPD yesterday. Yeah, there was one yesterday. I did the one on English teaching and reading in the classroom, and it was fantastic. So there, the idea that instead of apologising to students that the text is challenging, her idea is, it's challenging, we're all up to this, here we go, you've got a challenge, we can all do it. And they actually feel better for it at the end. And this is the thing I want to focus on. What makes text difficult to read? There is a serious argument that understanding text is more about being able to grasp the big picture rather than understanding every word or even understanding every single sentence, every individual sentence. It's about recognising the bigger structures. So that's what I want to focus on today, really. And that's been a problem for me with the type of classes that I've taught for a long time now, is actually getting them to read at all. And in a class I taught last year with nurture students, I gave them it was Key Stage 3, but I gave them a text at the beginning of a 6-week period. And they said they'd read it, we all read it together, and they turned it over. And I asked them simple questions like, what colour was the boy's jumper? What day was it? What was the weather like? And they could answer only 2 out of 10. And this went on for a couple of weeks. They got better and better and better. And in the end, one of the boys said to me, I wasn't reading before. I was just waiting for the question. So I think that idea of what are we doing with a text rather than what is the text about was to me quite fundamental, really. So I wanted to get back to basics with how I could actually get students to understand the meaning of a text without reading every single word and getting bogged down on it. and also how to hopefully then increase their enjoyment of it. So this is one of the techniques I came up with, which was to take some of the words out. So this is an example. Now here I've taken out two lots of word. I've taken out the essential verb, is it hate or love? And where it's got an underlined, I've taken away another tricky word. Now the idea is that for this one, they can decide whether it's hate or love and fill their own words in. But I've taken away the tricky vocabulary, and it gives them a way in, and it's hopefully more interesting than just reading it. So is it love or is it hate? And it is, in fact, I hated him. I hated him. I hated his something ways and his something manners. I hated his handsome boyish face with its frame of golden hair and its blue, beaming, hopeful eyes. I hated him for the sword which swung across the stiff skirts of his coat, for the money, etc. Now this is from Samuel Logood's Revenge by Mary Braden. It's a 19th century text, but it actually really engaged students actually, because they talked about the fact that it's written from a male perspective, and their skirts, the man's got a skirt on and that kind of thing. So when I actually add the words here, there's the words that I've taken away that they would have struggled with. Okay, taking them away means they can read it without hassle, without stopping. Otherwise they would go, I hated his foppish ways and his and they would stop then, and they lose, as they're going through, they lose the bigger picture. It's also excruciating out loud, because we lose the whole sense, the whole meaning of the sentences together. So that really worked for me. It absolutely worked. And this was the text I used at the beginning. And I used this with a year 7 and 8 nurture group. And then what I did was try to make it fun. So I asked them questions like, I would say, take that away, turn it over, draw him. How many things can you remember about him? Would you like him? So again, we're getting into evaluating the text there. What do you think Lucy's like? Yeah? What's the narrator like? What happens next? And I got some really good work out of that, actually. They continued the story, they drew him, they talked about, they actually really liked the narrator. What about the man he's writing about, that kind of thing. So it was all interesting there, interesting things just to get them started, really. And they actually wanted to read the whole story, which was the first time it happened to me for ages with that kind of text. Somebody said, what was the text called? It's Samuel Logood's Revenge by Mary Braden, Braddon. Okay, that one. So that led me on then to more difficult texts and more GCSE appropriate texts. Okay, now you can do this with, it doesn't have to be 19th century, it could be a modern text. But how do they read aloud without stopping for each individual word? And I also had students say, I can't read this. They took one look, they just said, I can't read it. I'm not going to read it. I can't read it. So I said, don't worry. Hey, don't worry. Why can't you read it? It's got tricky words in. No problem. I've taken them out for you. Look, here you go. The idea is, this is from Tom Sawyer. It's the bit where the two kids go into the cave and there's bats. That I've taken away all the tricky words that would stop would blunt their understanding and mean that they stopped and stumbled. So you can do all sorts with this anyway. You can read it, you can put your own words in, you can compare it to the words that the writers use. There's all sorts of obvious activities there. But what I did was to teach my class a couple of years ago umming. So I'll show you what I mean. They would stop, you see, on a word they didn't know. So I got them to do this. They this way and that, far down into the secret depths of the cave, made another mark and off in search of to tell the upper world about it. Now it sounds mad, but actually we had a laugh about it, we did it, and then what happened is when they got a text with tricky words in, they and they did that quite publicly, and it wasn't a problem. What you can also do is you can get two students together once they've got confidence. I'll show you the words that are missing from that one. They're all the words in red there. Oh, Jenny says, I do that, it really works. Sorry, Jenny, you've seen this one text before. But what you can also do is you can give you can get students into pairs and give them a different text each, just a paragraph of, and you can get them to take out, blank out words and pass it on to their partner. And the partner has to see if they can A, read it and work out the story, and B, work out what words have been taken out. And what I found with that was I got students saying, oh, I could have read that word, you shouldn't have taken that one out. So it gave them loads of confidence. And they could then approach a text knowing that not knowing the word didn't matter, they could still read it. So it was that, I can get to the bottom of anything now. I mean, you could, I need to have the confidence to try a bit of Ulysses perhaps, but it's how we read if we can't pronounce something. My husband read the whole of the Harry Potter series to my son without knowing how you pronounced Hermione. And so when they went to the cinema to see it, Ben turned around to his dad and said, but Dad, she's called Hermione. So she remains Hermione to this day here. So again, it needn't hold up your reading. So moving on then. Once we've got the confidence to read and they've had a go at this, and Natalie, it's such a lovely idea. It does. It works really well. Brilliant. And they can anything then. Then you need to get into active reading. What do you want them to find out? We don't want them looking for similes, metaphors, forests, etc. We want them to enjoy the story. So these are the questions I'd ask. And I say, I want the bigger picture. What's happening? What's the crack? Where's it happening? Who's it happening to? How do the characters feel? The way I do it is I get them to bullet point. And this actually has several knock-on benefits, actually. So here are the bullet points. Now, I didn't do these. These were done by a class year before last. So here's the bullet points for the Tom Sawyer extract. Children walking around a cave, get chased by lots of bats, Becky gets scared, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the extract you had earlier. And I can send out the whole extract from that chapter. And you might think, well, what's the point of that? All they've done is bullet point it. But actually, you can do lots of interesting activities in the classroom there, because you can say, okay, I want you to bullet point it in 8. And then you can get together with a partner and you can say to them, okay, if I was going to evaluate why a child might like the text, which bullet points would you choose? So get together with your partner and think of the one and join together. Evaluate how it creates tension. So is this text tense? Which bullet points are most relevant to creating tension? Get your 8 bullet points down to 4, the 4 most crucial parts. So going back to what somebody asked on the feedback last week about getting them to focus on the important parts of the text, this is a good way to do it. Because they've picked out things that they could read and things they can do something with, rather than things they think you want them to find. They've found what they have found. So they're working with stuff they can work with now. And then we can move into using those for evaluation. So why do we enjoy the story? How successfully does it show the difference between the children's reaction? And then I've got a sort of AQA style question there. I felt very scared for Becky at the end. How far do you agree with that? And they can use their bullet points as a starting point to then go back to the text, okay? Helen says, I get them to write a summary in 25 words or less. Yeah, absolutely. Similar technique. Brilliant. Yeah. And I found this works really, really well. So that even when they don't write the bullet points, they mentally do it. But just a word of warning, you need to teach them what a bullet point is, because mine wrote the whole sentence out. The children who are called Tom and Becky walk around the cave on a Sunday because they are. And actually, if you teach them what bullet points are, it gets them to be more concise, which is a very good skill for the exams. But also it helps them planning. It helps them with everything if they understand what a bullet point is. Because we often say, do bullet points, and I'm not sure aware I've ever taught them what one is. So that's a way. Non-fiction then. Again, exactly the same technique. Take the words out, like I did with your starter activity there. Take the tricky words away, them, read aloud, get them to read what they can. But more importantly, even really than fiction, with non-fiction, we need to get them to know the bigger picture, okay? So I get them to read and bullet point these things. So what's the topic? I mean, I did a text a couple of years ago about dangerous dogs, and they said it's about dogs. I said, well, is it about dangerous dogs? Is it about all teenagers need to have dogs? Is it about my dog? Is it about hating dogs? So they need to be specific. And once they've got that, they've kind of got the bigger picture as well. What are the writer's main ideas? So again, that explaining to them that if you want to write about dangerous dogs, there's 15 things you could write about. Why have they chosen those 3? And that helps with their writing as well. What are the writer's feelings about the topic? And how does the writer want you to feel? Okay, so that's just the things I get them to bullet point. Okay, and here's an example that I've used in class here with a very relevant text actually from Caitlin Moran about homeschooling. She beautifully says that she was semi-feral, library-based, self-educated. I love that. She thinks it's the route for everybody. I'm not sure we want semi-feral students back next week, but there you go. And then here, look, here's the bullet point. This is what a student did for a couple of years ago with this one. What's the topic? Schools and how they should be run. What are the writer's main ideas? And there you go. What are the writer's feelings? And how does the writer want you to feel? Now, if they can answer those bullet points, then they understand the text. And then what they can do is to start looking at what language the writer used. So what language did she use to show you she wants change? What language did she use to show that the job market had changed? And why? Why did she use that type of language? So they've crystallized it down. Yeah, somebody said, I really like this example. I think I've got the extract is a lot longer than that. And I think I did actually a non-fiction multi-choice quiz on it this week. So I'll try. It's on our Show My Homework system. I'll see if I can find the questions and give them out to you next week. So it worked very well. Okay, so that's my reading technique. The next thing that isn't done often enough, that students don't do, is they don't read anything in italics or read instructions. So they don't read the contextual information. And even my top set year 10 class, when I gave them a non-fiction piece recently, went straight for the text and ignored the contextual information, which was annoying because I'd spent time writing it. So let's look at what to do there. Now, there's the contextual information from the starter activity. So if you read that without the extract, you know it's from The Secret Teacher. You know it's anonymous, and you know it's published by the Guardian Press. So the person is likely to be lentil-eating, sandal-wearing hippie. Joke. You know it's going to be, it's about a year in the life of an NQT. You know it's probably going to be humorous because it's anonymous, and it's you know it's going to be sympathetic to teachers because it's the Guardian. So there you go. They are already then approaching the text with some idea of what to expect. This is from 2017 exam. Now, the underlining is mine, but this was the contextual information that went before one of the non-fiction texts. And if you read that carefully, it was about somebody in a strict regime camp, arrested and imprisoned for writing what was considered to be anti-Soviet poetry. In this extract, the camp officer is checking the prisoner's possessions. I mean, even if all they read is that, they know that this is not going to be jolly, okay? This is not going to be fun. So they can approach it knowing what to expect. And then if they're surprised, then that would give them something to write about if it isn't what they expect. So it's really, I think, that contextual important information, because we are expecting them to read something cold. And I don't know about you, but I get very nervous if I don't know the genre of something and I don't know what to expect. I don't like films if I'm not, my son says I don't like films if I don't know the ending. But I am a bit like that. I like to feel safe in my genre. And I like to then know whether, am I going to be surprised or am I going to be gratified? So here's 3 more. Ooh, not moving. Here we go. Now, these are all from the British Library. The first 2 are from the British Library, the website I showed you earlier. So this is a publicity notice for a lecture by John Broxop, a former convict from York, who had returned to Britain after 14 years in a penal colony. Transportation was the practice of sending criminals out of the country. It was almost a century old at the time of this lecture and always been controversial. So if you show them that, what do they expect from a publicity notice? Do they expect long sentences? Do they expect lots of short, exciting sentences? Again, without using any terminology here, you can start to think about what techniques and features the text might have, and then look at the text and see whether they're surprised. Now, the next one, again, comes from that British Library site, and it is a letter. It's the letter that was sent anonymously to the City of London police accusing the actor Richard Mansfield of perpetrating the murders. So that was a really interesting one, actually, to use in the classroom, because they can think about what would somebody write. They could write the letter, actually. It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? And then check the letter against, it's perhaps a bit ghouly, but I think that would be interesting there. What would they expect? And you can, and as somebody said, you can usually get the tone. So yes, always read that very carefully to start with. So if we look at the final one, and I'm going to show you an extract from it, is Pablo Escobar. Now, this is an extract from Pablo Escobar, Part 1, The Rise. I don't have it. I found this on Amazon, actually, because I wanted a modern crime book that they would have heard of. A biography of the Colombian drug lord and terrorist who is reputed to be the wealthiest criminal in history, having amassed an estimated net worth of $30 billion at the time of his death. I don't know if you've watched Narcos, by the way, the Netflix series, but it's brilliant. This extract is about the teenage years of Pablo and his brother Roberto. So I like that, because I would say, what do you think the teenage years were like? Because I would have expected that he had a very sad, disaffected childhood. I would have expected something to have gone wrong. Maybe he was brought up without parents. Maybe he was orphaned at a young age, etc., etc. So again, having that in advance and then thinking about what might be to come. But other ways you can use this, actually, is if you show them 3, is give them some choice. Which do you want to read? Okay, I've got all 3. Which would you like to read? Why? I would imagine they'd go for the Escobar one, but maybe not. They might go for the Jack the Ripper letter. But getting that sense of intrigue, that sense of excitement, that sense of anticipation is, I think, sometimes missing when we plonk in front of them an exam paper. So the idea of building up some excitement, really, about what they're going to come across, I think is good. So let's look then at Pablo. And this is just taken from the Amazon site, where you can look at the first part of the book. Roberto excelled. He studied electrical engineering and science and electronics, which is interesting. While not working, he was cycling, and his assistant Pablo washed his bike. Perhaps that was where he got his sense of injustice from. But interestingly, before the crimes escalated, he co-founded a local chapter of the Boy Scouts, which I thought was interesting, organised home dances, mowed grass and camped on the weekends. So it's not necessarily what you'd expect. The first opening chapter of the book actually is worth a look, because it does use some very interesting language, and it is interesting about his parents. It would be a good text to use in the classrooms. Yeah, somebody says, good idea to give them the choice of extracts. I like doing that, and you can always steer them towards the one that you wanted them to use anyway. But I think it's a good idea to get their juices flowing, if you like, before you actually show them something. And by the way, when I used the technique of showing them openings of books and giving them choice with Year 8 Nurture, only twice it happened, but out of 6 weeks, twice they wanted to read the actual book it came from. And in one case, the library had to buy it in, and the kid was so excited that the book was going to be bought in especially for him. And I don't think I would have got that technique had I not done the pre-reading activities. I don't think I would have got that response. So it was really well worth it, even if it only happens once in your career, for a student to want to go and buy the book that you have shown them an extract from. I think it's quite something. Or perhaps it happens to you all the time. It hasn't happened to me very often. Okay. So that's basically the reading skills that I like to go through, the getting the reluctant reader, the lazy reader, and the underconfident reader. And I think also we shouldn't ignore, with those techniques, the ones we assume are reading a lot and are the brighter students, because even they can have trouble. They can be embarrassed when reading a word they aren't able to pronounce, and that can stop them reading aloud, and it can then hinder their understanding. So I don't think we need to just assume that these techniques and these difficulties are just faced by students who are on the CD borderline, who are weak, who are lazy, who are naughty. I think it can be across the board. The embarrassment. I mean, I have it here on this. If I can't pronounce a word and I've got to say it on a presentation, it's embarrassing. It shows you up. So again, these are all techniques to get around that. And I don't think it often is apparent with brighter students. So then when they can read, just two little things to end with. Reading notes. I've only used this once with a bright class. And this is I recognise that this is a Christmas Carol, and it is a literature text, but I did it with an unseen for the language exam. So I get them to take notes down the side along the lines that I showed you with the active reading, and then it ends with this: I want a fast read first impression. What did you think? Hated him, loved him, want to read more. And then a 50-word summary when they've gone back over it. And then things like initial impressions of Scrooge. Obviously, you can put whatever you want in the boxes at the bottom there. Okay, but I found that very useful. And also, they felt very important. It's like the Cornell note-taking. They really felt important having a sheet to fill in while they were reading. And here's another one. This is the non-fiction, the Why I Should Run Our Schools. Okay, the semi-feral Caitlin Moran there. But slight change at the bottom is I've given more boxes there. And I tell you what I've done there is I've put new things because I think, again, and then it was Key Stage 3, but the things that my students in my small class liked were learning things from reading. And that's really what we should be encouraging, because it's what we read for, isn't it? For enjoyment and to learn. So, what have you learned about Escobar that surprised you? What do you want to know? What's it prompts you to want to know? Again, that whole idea of taking that text out and wanting to go somewhere with it is exciting. Do you agree or disagree? I want your opinion. Yeah. What do you think other readers would think? What would your mum think of Escobar? Would she even want to read it? Why wouldn't she? Okay. Are you surprised I wanted to read it? That kind of thing, really. So the whole idea of giving them a piece of paper, an actual sheet. I did it on A4. It needed to be double-sided for one of them, but again, the whole article, let's go for it. Let's really just focus the whole lesson on reading and actually make it more interesting. And then I'm going to have to be quick because I'm going to run out of time. But just a couple of other things to end on. One, another thing that you can do, and this is an extract from Let's Think in English, which are on our website. There's some free lessons on our website, but it's also part of it was part of a study into reading and teaching. And this just basically says, do you want to read through in a logical way, or do you want to stop the story at various points and ask the students to speculate? So one thing you can do, and it works well for structure, is to read it. This is Jaws, is to read a paragraph. There you go. You can give one student that paragraph, get them to read it, feel comfortable with it, read it aloud. And then say, here's another paragraph. Where did it go? Does it go before or after the previous one? And I've done this with lots of text, and the students find it quite exciting, actually. Sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes it's not, and we discuss it. This one isn't obvious, and it's one of the most successful. I did a little project on sharks last year. Why is one going before the other? So again, it's just getting into the basic structure of a text, but it's making the whole reading process just a little bit more interesting. And what would happen after that? I mean, it's Jaws, so we all know, don't we? But if it doesn't necessarily follow with all texts that they know. Okay. Final things, just fun things. I'm a great believer in reading aloud to them, that element of control. But also, I find that more powerful sometimes with students who don't concentrate enough when I give them a piece of text and they're like, oh, it's English, this is so boring. But if I read aloud, they pay more attention. Now, reading aloud with a purpose. This is a text here about Miss Havisham. It's not from the book, it's a description of her. So I often say, just listen, make no notes, just listen. And then I will ask them questions afterwards. Or you can give them different recall. You can ask one person to remember why she seems sad, one person to remember why she seems mad, and one person why she seems dangerous. So it's again that reading with a bit more concentration and a bit more of a purpose then, and it's quite good fun to do. But one final one that I may have shown you before if I've come to your school, but I make no excuses because it's fab fun, and it's the listen and recall. So it's got instructions. This is for students, this slide. You get them into groups of 4. One's a note taker, one's a picture taker, one's a listener, and one's an assessor. You can can the assessor if you don't want to. So you read them a story or an extract. The note taker obviously makes notes. The picture taker draws. The listener listens and can't write anything. And the idea is that at the end, they all have to either write up or tell the assessor what they've heard. I usually find it helps to write it out. And the assessor judges who has got the best recall. And almost certainly it's who do you think who would be the best, actually, just to end on? Who do you think? The note taker, the picture taker, or the listener? In my experience, that is. It's interesting to see. The listener, the note taker, picture. That's interesting. Without exception, when I've done it, it's the listener. Yeah, people are saying that I find this great fun, and it's about getting them to focus rather than thinking when they're reading it, when they're reading something. Oh, I need to find a technique here. I need to zoom in on a word. I need to do something with it. Just actually absorbing it and coming away with an understanding of why the writer picked up a pen, what the effect on you has been, what the effect on somebody else might be, and how much you've recalled and why. Why has one person remembered one thing and another person remembered another? That's fascinating in itself, isn't it? And worth thinking about. Okay, so that ends that. Now we're going to have a quick tea break, which I haven't really left loads of time for. So if you haven't been with us before, you're going to be put into a breakout group, actually, which sounds really funky, but it just means that you're going to be with a smaller group of people out of the 115 that we've got at the moment, and you'll be able to chat to them. Basically, the idea being that you talk about what, oh, Pam says it is funky. We share ideas. So have I inspired you to do any of those things? Have you already tried something in the classroom that you could share in that break time? So we've just got time to do, I think, about 4 minutes, okay? Maybe 5. So if we could go into our breaks now, that would be lovely. Thank you. It happens automatically. You don't have to do anything. Back.
We're back in the room.
Oh, where's Liz? Liz has gone.
Oh, Liz just fell out of the room. Hope she's all right and didn't land too hard.
Is she coming back? Anyway, I'll just share a few things.
Shall we start? Yeah.
From my room then. People loved most of all the context ideas. They're showing the context first. Other ideas were, and I liked this one, give them some words in advance. So one week, give them some tricky words that are going to crop up in a text the next week, just to practice and feel confident with. I like that idea. Starting with an image and, going from there. The other one was going back to the first story blackout picture I showed at the very beginning. Somebody said that would be really good to capture the essence of poetry. So rather than using it as a way of finding words to analyze, actually using it as a way to find words that capture the essence. I love that, capturing the essence. So
yeah, that sounds good.
Pam, what did you get?
Well, before I was going to say anything, Katie was in one of the rooms and she wants to speak. So Katie, are you... Hello, do you want to share with us what you heard? Do you think was good?
Yeah, I'm sorry I don't know how to get my camera to turn on, so that's probably actually a blessed relief.
Oh, bless.
Everyone.
Top. There's a little green figure at the top, Katie.
The green, yeah. Anyway.
Green, I'll do it next time.
Okay.
Yeah, just lots of thoughts about being excited around sharing some of those missing word activities, perhaps doing that as paired activities and having the students swap and so forth.
Right.
And then a bit of a chat about glossaries and using like vocab bingo and making a bit of a game of working out what some of those missing words could be, rather than them being like
that
a
is
barrier.
Good, yeah.
And then just a few questions about people asking, these are all really great ideas, but any ideas from the room about how we might be able to do this remotely? Because at the moment, it seems like a lot of the sort of teacher talking on Zoom or Loom or whatever it might be, and like a minimal amount of opportunity for kids to work together. So I don't know if these are things that we think maybe save them up for when we're face to face, or ideas about how they could be modified to work remotely.
I have used the reading, the reading resource I showed at the end remotely, but that was with brighter students. I think you could easily send out a text with words missing, and it would be quite fun actually to get the students to read it, fill the gaps in, do a 25-word summary of it, and then you could compare who had got the best words. I think that'd be quite good fun actually.
If you've got the chat function in whatever kind of remote classroom teaching you're doing, rather than maybe a kind of spoken function, you could always get them to chat words that they think might go in the gaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of schools aren't actually doing live lessons in that sense, but yeah, I mean, if you had live lessons, you could do that. Absolutely, yeah.
There's quite a Carolyn, and a few people are just Carolyn just made some comments there. Julie, can you see what she said about Padlet?
Set up a Padlet for students to submit ideas. That's brilliant. And comment on each other's. That would be brilliant. I love a good Padlet, said Helen. I haven't Padletted yet, but I'm going to. I like that idea. I love that.
Well, while they're still typing, I was going to say a lot of people really, really keen on the bullet point method in the 2 rooms that I was in. Right. So they're going to do that.
Right.
And James was saying, well, Rosa was saying she explicitly teaches the reading strategies to make, to help people with their reading and, visualization, to get them to sort of really think about how they read and what they're reading, etc., which sounded really good. And James was saying that what he does, a lot of the things he's seen today, was thinking about with resit students, they'd be really good to build their confidence at the start of a course. So that sounded good.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of colleges that I've been to use the umming technique, which we've now spelt as UMMING. So it's with a double M, in case you didn't know. I've made that word up. And I'm doing it now. But they've used it with great success in colleges, because often when students get to college, they're absolutely beaten down, aren't they? And they've failed maybe once or twice. And
that's the thing,
yeah. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody.
That's it. Great.
Shall we move on, Pam? Do you think? Are we?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no, I was just going to say everyone can see what people are writing in the comments anyway. A lot of people were saying how good they found Padlet. So
yeah, Padlet is definitely. I'm going to have a go at that. In fact, I've already got an idea. I'm going to do missing words and a Padlet next week. I'm excited about that already.
Simone's got one. I know we're running out of time, but just quickly, Simone's got a question. Can you see that? It says, I'm having a real problem with students blanking their screens and muting themselves, and have heard a lot of teachers have found this. Just wondered if anyone's quickly got any ideas for that, or if you have had any idea for that, Julie?
I haven't. I have heard. I haven't done actual live teaching. My school are doing, we're doing setting work remotely on Show My Homework and checking in via tutor groups. So I'm afraid I can't, although I do have a friend who teaches in Hong Kong, and the only way he could do it was to, at various points in the lesson, and this was desperation, was to get them to hold up a clock that was moving with a because he had students posting pictures of themselves like this with their pen, and then leaving. I'm afraid I don't know.
Wow. Very using their initiative, obviously.
Outside of my own. Okay, Pam, let's move on, because we are...
Right, ready when you are.
For some reason, my clicker's not working. Shared resources then. Over to you.
Okay, so we've had some more resources in this week. We get resources every week, which is great. So Paulette T sent in a summer homework booklet for Year 7 and Year 8. Admittedly, it's literature, but it's really good. So I'm going to get those put on the website page that you know about anyway, which is the link down the bottom there. There's some other things as well, so they're all going to be on that webpage. I'll just go quickly because we might run out of time. There's the link at the bottom of the slide, and you're all going to get the slides and everything after. And also, yes, sorry, Judy, did you want to move on? Keep sharing those things, by the way, for us. And as you can see there, that's the what's the word looking for? Email address, that's it, to send them to, and we'll make them available to all who've signed up.
Yeah.
And with regards to the £25 voucher for shared resources, let's go back one slide and we'll do the little draw first. Thank you. I know this is much anticipated.
For everybody that completes the feedback, the next week you go into
the draw. Yeah.
So if you do the feedback,
that's it. So make sure at the end that you do the feedback survey, because not everybody has done it for the last couple of weeks, and it's it's worth it for a tenner, isn't it, if you win. So the winner this week for last week's is Zena Zeina. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but are you here? If not, we will send you the voucher. So if you're here, you can perhaps comment in the, but if you're not, don't worry, we'll send you the voucher. So she's the winner this week. And let's just go on one slide for the £25 draw, please.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is the Amazon. Yeah, this is the big bucks. This is the Amazon £25 draw. And the winner of that one is, it's Nicole B. Now, Nicole has sent us in, I'm just looking again at the resources she sent in. She sent us in a lot of resources about Dropshift Zoom. Don't know if you know that one, Julie.
Nicole's just posted. She says, "Yay, thank you. Well done, Nicole. Thank you very much."
That's fine. Yeah, well done, Nicole. And she also sent in resources for Inspector Calls. So thank you. So that £25 voucher is going to be winging its way towards you. Well, I'm going to email you the code, sort of thing. Yeah. So congratulations on that.
Lovely.
And that's it really for this week. Don't forget to keep sharing your resources. And back to you, Julie. I'm trying to talk quickly. Sorry, I'll wrap up.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for sending stuff in. Obviously, you get all my stuff on there anyway, and I think Nicole shared in the group chat the link. The links are on the PowerPoint. Right, in terms of the future, 18th of June literature. Pam, can I say who is the special guest?
Yes, you can, because that's been, yes, he's definitely doing it now, so we're all sorted.
Wonderful Chris Curtis joining me on the 25th. Okay.
And what a great book that is. Really good.
Fabulous. It's brilliant. Now, next week, I'm going to give you 3 topics that he has offered to talk on, and we're going to choose. So I must remember to do that. 3 topics, and he's going to talk on one of them. So that's fabulous. He's brilliant. And then the 2nd of July or the 9th, something special is happening. That date might change. But what I wanted you to
It's the 9th. It's the 9th, yeah.
The 9th is going to be something special. But what I wanted you to know is there will be probably 2 literature sessions before the end of term and 1 more language. So if there is anything particularly you want me to cover in that language, do please let me know. Otherwise, I'll go off on my own thing. But what I thought I'd do is kind of like a big roundup of everything we've done so far during these weeks. Okay.
So on that slide where it says the 9th, we've only just changed that now. So it should be the other way around. The 2nd is going to be language then,
yep.
And then the 9th is going to be, sorry, we should have changed that, but we only decided for sure yesterday.
It's going to be something special, which we'll tell you about next week. Okay, so just to let you know on those, if there's anything in particular you want or need, and then we'll be taking a break for the summer in much the same way as programmes like this morning and the One Show do. I feel really important. Okay, just saying, I'm just saying, picking myself up now. Okay, usual slides. What more can we do to help? Just get in touch. Those free online lessons have been viewed loads of times now already. We had 800, didn't we, on the first day?
That's right. Yeah, definitely. And they're there all the time, so people can watch them when it suits them. They're just permanently on there after they've been streamed.
Yeah. And then there's a secondary resources thing. I share these every week. Obviously, the new English literature texts are there. Can you help with research? If you're a head of department and you'd like to help, please get in touch. Even if you're not, if you let people know outside of our subject area as well. There's Claire who can help with anything you need. And if you want any more information, there's the YouTube video to watch. And there's the feedback. And that really, I think, unless you've got anything else, Pam, I think that's it. Thanks ever so much.
No, that's it. I was just going to put, after we finished, I'll put the link to the webpage again because people are asking about that. So it's in the slides, but I'll put it in the webpage.
And if you
in the chat
I'll
link
share on here actually what my Twitter handle is. I think I'll do that next week because it'd be really, really great actually if you could find me. I think it's at Julie Hughes 4, Jules Hughes 4.
That's it. I think it is. Yeah.
But if you
and also don't forget to. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say it'd be really great if you could publicise these. If you could just say thanks, Julie, on it. You don't necessarily have to praise, but if you could just share the idea of these webinars, actually, because we'd really like that. More people.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of thanks on there or on the Pearson Twitter handle would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Julie, and thanks everybody.
Thank you. Bye.